I'd like to welcome everyone to our Plasticulture event on this really hot Saturday afternoon. And my name is Penny Ellis, and I'll be the moderator for today's event. I just checked a few minutes ago, and I can't believe we have over 450 people signed up, registered for today's event. So it's definitely a topic that people are interested in. And while we're waiting for people to get logged in, I'd like to go over a few attendee notes in the itinerary for today's presentation. So I think we have a slide coming up here. There we go. Give it a minute to come up. For the attendee overview slide.
Hi, Ellen. Hi, everybody. So my name's Lisa Emanuelson, and I'm helping behind the scenes here. So just a couple of things for you guys as attendees to keep in mind that when you come into the webinar, you are automatically muted, and you can raise your hand. And actually what I'd like to do is make sure that everybody can hear me. So if you look down on that control panel tab, you should see a spot for you to raise your hand. So if you could raise your hand if you hear me, that would be super helpful, so I can tell if people can hear me. Oh, this is fantastic. You guys are awesome.
And maybe they should raise their hand if they can hear me too, just to make sure my equipment's on.
Yes.
Can they hear me?
We can all hear you.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
Excellent. Excellent. Good job. Good job, everybody. And then on the bottom of your expanded control panel, you'll see that there's a spot for questions. You know, we're expecting a lot of people here today, and so you can type in a question. We're going to take questions at the end of the presentation. So you can type in your question towards the end of all the presentations. And when you type in your question, make sure you let us know who it's directed to, which of the panelists it's directed to. If we don't get to your question today, but you're still interested in an answer, you can email plasticulture103@gmail.com, and Penny or one of the other participants will get back to you with an answer to your question. And I just want to make sure you know as well that if you're having any kind of troubles with the size of the camera or the size of the PowerPoint, if one of those is too big or one of those is too small, you can change the size of either one of those by grabbing that middle bar in your screen and then pulling up and down on it. So that's a way for you to be able to change the size. Okay, so that is that. So before we get to our panel participants, we're having just a little bit of trouble with some of our panelists being able to join, Penny. So I just want to wait a few minutes if there's something else that you want to talk about here. So.
Well, I can talk about Open Farm Tours, which is coming up. And this event is part of Open Farm Tours. You know, because of this year, we're with the COVID-19 and the fires and everything, I was really tempted to just cancel the tours altogether. But I just figured, you know, that it's just too important. All this stuff is just too important with so many of our institutions and a lot of the ecosystems that are collapsing around us and everything. And it's just important for people to know what's going on and to feel like we have some control over, you know, what we do with our agriculture and our food system. So anyways, and for those of you who aren't familiar with Open Farm Tours, it was started 7 years ago, and it was basically started to connect people with their food systems. And so this would be our 7th year of doing the tours. And anyways, so we decided to have a webinar as part of this year's tours. I didn't want to do a virtual tour or anything of a farm, because really the value of going out in nature and being on the farms is not something that you can really get virtually. So anyways, I guess we're still waiting for people to join. Is that right, Lisa? Or can we start with Pam?
Actually, we can start with Pam. So so
Good.
let me get Pam dialed in here, and then we're good to
Okay.
go. So
Okay. Sounds good. Okay. So we're going to start off with Pam Crone. And Pam serves as the Agriculture Water Quality Coordinator with the California Marine Sanctuary Foundation and the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. And throughout her career, Pam's interests have been in how humans can create value-added processes that are in harmony with nature. Reducing plastic pollution entering the oceans from agriculture is one of the California Marine Sanctuary Foundation's strategic goals. And Pam has done considerable research on the impacts of agricultural plastics on our environment and works to help reduce agricultural pollution through Monterey Bay watershed. So welcome, Pam. Good to see you.
Thank you, Penny. Thank you so much for hosting the Open Farm Tours and inviting me to be a presenter. Plastic use in agriculture is really an important topic. It's near and dear to my heart. I'm the Ag Water Quality Coordinator for the California Marine Sanctuary Foundation, as Penny pointed out. And therefore, I'm really concerned with agriculture and keeping it healthy and vibrant, keeping it feeding the world. And also I'm concerned with the ocean and keeping it healthy and vibrant and keeping the pollution out of the ocean. And we all know that plastic is one of the major sources of ocean pollution and something that we're all aware of and concerned with and know that we need to do better. So that's true of every single sector. It's true whether you're in agriculture or packaging or a consumer using plastic bags. We all need to be more aware of plastic use and proper disposal so that we create something on the left side of the diagram here which shows a product being recycled and reused versus on the right side where it's going into the sanctuary where it can harm the things that live there. Next slide, please. So this is just a picture that shows how close agriculture is to the ocean, with the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary being on the ocean side and the fields with agriculture being on the land side. Agriculture is not one of the predominant users of plastic. It only uses between 3 and 5% of the total plastic produced. But because it's in an area that's open to the sun and the wind, the air, the rain, and the water, that plastic can easily be degraded and carried into the ocean. So even though it's not a very large sector, it's a very important sector, and it's an area where we need to exercise proper concern and proper methods to make sure the plastic is removed from the field and properly taken care of at the end of its life. Next slide. So how much plastic is used in agriculture? A total of about 400 million tons of plastic is used worldwide in all types of plastic, whereas agriculture only uses 2 to 5% of that total. Worldwide, just over 12,000 million pounds. In the US, about 816 million pounds. And I did a study of Monterey. This was my deep dive into plastic, was to look at how much plastic is used on fields in Monterey County. And we found 20 million pounds of plastic were used on agricultural fields. You can see the type of plastic that's used here in that picture. with a strawberry field and some plastic mulch that's used on that field to prevent weed growth and increase yields and improve water retention and a number of other benefits. Next slide. So plasticulture has been a term that's been coined in agriculture for plastic that is used in agriculture. And that's in recognition that plastic is very important to agriculture. It has many functions, it has many uses, and it's used as a film, as a film for polyethylene mulch that's used to prevent weed growth, to increase soil retention, to prolong the growing season. It's used in hoop houses to control the temperature and the climate in those hoop houses. It's used as fumigation tarp to help prevent soil, the growth of different kinds of soil infection. It's used in packaging and transportation of products, fertilizer sacks and the end product so that it can be shipped to the market. It's used for water management, such as drip tape and storage tanks and irrigation tubing. It's used to keep animals from entering the field, which is a food safety concern. It's used to prevent birds from eating some of the produce as a bird netting, used to keep dust out of the field and keep it off of our crops, and has many other uses such as personal protective equipment. And plastic is even used around fertilizer so that we can create these slow release fertilizer pellets. Next slide. And the reason plastic has so many uses is that it has so many different characteristics. There's not just one type of plastic, there are many types of plastic. It's relatively inexpensive. It can be made to perform many different functions, and it's really important to crop production. It allows us to use our resources more efficiently. If it weren't for drip tape, which is used on most fields in Monterey County right now, we'd have to use about 4 times as much water if we were still using the old methods of irrigation. We can place fertilizer right at the base of the crop and where it's needed by the crop rather than putting fertilizer across the whole field. It suppresses weeds, it increases yields. Really, it's hard to imagine how we could grow crops without plastic just because of its many benefits and its great importance to agriculture. And so because it is so important to us, we need to figure out how to responsibly use that plastic. And we can be responsible or irresponsible in how we use it and how we deal with it. Next slide. So one of the goals that I have, and I've been working collaboratively with a number of other organizations and groups, California State University, Monterey Bay, the Monterey Sustainability Working Group, and other groups as well on how to prevent plastic movement from agricultural fields into the ocean. The 2 primary means of transport are water and wind. Next slide. So we've been involved in a 3-year study so far, and the questions that we've been working on are how much plastic is used on fields in Monterey County in crop production, and what end-of-life strategies are available for this plastic. Secondly, is plastic pollution from agriculture a problem here? Is there any evidence that it's getting into streams and into the ocean? And third, what can stakeholders do so that we can reduce the plastic pollution problem? Next slide. So the first question we addressed was how much plastic is used in Monterey County on the fields. So we limited our view of plastic to just looking at 3 types of plastic: drip tape, hoop house plastic, and films, plastic mulch and fumigation tarps. And we ignored all the other kind of plastic that I showed on that first slide that's used in agriculture, and focused our efforts on just the plastic used on the field, because that's where the sun reaches the plastic, and that's where we feel the greatest risk is to that plastic getting into the ocean because of its exposure to sun and wind and rain. So those were the focus of our effort, was to evaluate how much of each of those types of plastic is used. And to make that evaluation, we use the Monterey County Ag Commissioner's crop report to look at how much acreage is planted in each of the different kinds of crops grown in Monterey County. And then we took UC Cooperative Extension economic studies, some of their cost studies, and reviewed each of those carefully to look at how much different kinds of plastic is used for each kind of crop. And then we simply just multiplied and came up with how much plastic is used by each crop type and for each type of field plastic. And you can see there that drip irrigation tape is used almost universally. It's used in so many different kind of crops. And so over 12 million pounds per year of drip tape is used in Monterey County. Second was film, which is the plastic mulch and the fumigation tarp. And that's used primarily in strawberry production, but it is used in caneberries and peppers and some other kinds of crops too. And then hoop houses came in the third most used. And so our total field plastic use was the 20 million pounds a year. And you can see that strawberries use more plastic than any other kind of crop, just because they're using both a lot of mulch as well as the drip tape. Next slide. So I work for the California Marine Sanctuary Foundation, and we're really a solutions-oriented organization. We want to find ways to solve the problem. And so the four most important things about finding solutions to the agriculture plastic use problem, first of all, is complete removal from the field. I was surprised when I read a study by Washington State University that looked at plastic removal of polyethylene mulch from the field, and their study found that about 10% of the plastic remained in the field after it was removed because it fragmented and broke apart and remained in the soil and in the field and didn't get completely removed. So finding equipment so that we can remove more of that plastic, and being super vigilant, looking for plastic and removing it after that first pass and taking it out of the field is really important. Second of importance is recycling, being sure that we recycle as much plastic as we can. In order to recycle that plastic, there are two things that are really important. One is that the soil and plant material is removed from the plastic before it goes to the recycler, both because it represents an extra cost in terms of transportation, and also because it's very difficult to remove the soil and plant material from the plastic at the recycler. It's best to do as much as possible on the field site. Also, growers don't want to lose that soil. It's best to leave that soil in the field where it can continue to function in the growth of future crops. And secondly is keeping separate piles for different kinds of plastic, because in order to be recycled, we can't throw all the plastic together into the same batch. It's got to be kept separate. It has different chemical properties, and by keeping it separate, it makes it much more recyclable. Another possible solution is to reuse the plastic, either to reuse the same product, but another means of reuse is to preferentially purchase plastic with recycled content. So now there are some kinds of drip irrigation tape that has recycled content in it. And so if growers preferentially purchase that, that is one way of reusing that same product. again and again because it's in the recycled content. Or as consumers, we can all look for products that have recycled content in them, whether it's chairs or building materials or bags or other things. And the fourth way that we can find better solutions for plastic use is to look at ways to replace plastic, to replace polyethylene mulch with biodegradable mulch, and to replace plastic packaging with recyclable cardboard packaging. Next slide. So at the end of the life of the plastic, it's important when you're purchasing plastic to already be planning for end of life, to know whether you're going to need to deliver it to waste management. Monterey County's waste management received 6,000 tons of agricultural plastic last year. Half of it was drip irrigation tubing and half of it was polyethylene mulch. Drip irrigation tubing can be recycled. It's very difficult right now to recycle polyethylene mulch, but hopefully we can reduce the amount of drip irrigation tubing going to waste management by sending it to recycling. Instead, there are some drip irrigation tubing companies that guarantee recycling of their product. So it's possible to look for those companies and to purchase drip irrigation tubing from those companies and plan in advance before you purchase that tape. Plan to recycle it, plan that reuse. Burning and burying is illegal in California. It is legal in some other states, but not in California. And another thing is to start looking at replacing plastic with other things, either with a different product like biodegradable mulch, which, by the way, is not allowed on organic production in the United States yet. It is allowed in Europe and Australia. Maybe someday in the US it will be allowed. And then sometimes other methods can be used. For instance, instead of fumigation, tarp, to try anaerobic soil disinfection. And then purchasing products with a longer life rather than a single-use personal protective equipment to buy longer use. Next slide. So plastic is a problem in the ocean because it degrades, it breaks apart, it absorbs chemicals. These chemical additives can be dangerous to the life in the ocean that consumes those little microplastics or larger pieces of plastic, whether they mistake it for a jellyfish and consume a plastic bag, or whether there's a microplastic that they mistake for algae or for some other kind of material that they eat. And then plastic can also travel up the food chain. So it's a big problem when it gets in the ocean, and the best solution is keeping it out of the ocean. Once it's in the ocean, we really don't have a good means to remove it. Next slide. So we asked the question, is plastic really getting into local streams and where those streams can carry it to the ocean? And so we did bank surveys. We went to 10 different agricultural streams in agriculturally dominated areas in Monterey County. And this is one picture of an example. We chose a quadrat in next to that stream and removed the plastic from the soil and from the plant growth along the side of the stream. Took it back and washed that plastic. We counted the amount of plastic and distinguished it by type, whether it was film, and you can see on the right side of this slide some of the different kinds of plastic that we collected. We collected the polyethylene mulch or the film, and then we also collected a lot of that strapping tape, which you can see is red and blue there, as well as many other kinds of plastic. Next slide. So this is the results from our bank monitoring. So we by far found more plastic mulch than any other kind of material, and that's not surprising. It's very lightweight. It's easily transported by the wind or by water. And there's a lot of it that's used in Monterey County, so it breaks into small fragments, and we primarily found small pieces less than 2 inches across. Our second most found type of plastic was strapping tape, and that to me was a surprise. I didn't really expect to find so much strapping tape. We didn't measure the weights of these things. We just measured the number of pieces. But if we had measured weight, I'm not sure whether strapping tape may have come in first. But both of those were the most predominant kinds of plastic that we found. But we also found produce packaging. Produce is packaged in the fields here and sometimes can escape the line and be blown in the wind. We found personal protective equipment, hair nets and gloves. And then we found fragments of plastic from equipment or from PVC irrigation pipe. Next slide. In addition to the stream bank monitoring, we also did microplastic monitoring, and this was to look at the water itself and to see if there was evidence of microplastic. We monitored the same locations as for the banks, which was in agriculturally dominated landscapes. We took a net out and we stood with our net in the water and measured how much water went through the net. And then we took that plastic, we took the net back and rinsed it, and in a lab we separated the plastic from the plant matter and looked at it through a microscope. And you can see on the right side that that's the kind of plastic that we saw in the microscope. And we counted it, and the next slide is going to show the results of our microplastic count. Next slide. So in terms of microplastics, it's interesting because the primary type of plastic we found was pellets. And so this is those slow release fertilizers that I talked about earlier, which is one of the plastic uses in agriculture. It's those kinds of fertilizers just have a little coating of plastic that can be different colors. It's often green, sometimes black. And we found those pellets both with the fertilizer still in it, unfortunately, which means that it didn't get to the crop where it would have been of value. But we also found those pellets broken open, almost like an eggshell, where it was still round and you could still see that it had contained something, but that the fertilizer had been released from it. So more than 50% of the microplastic we found were from those slow release fertilizer pellets. We also found about equal amounts of films and fibers and fragments in plastic. And in terms of the density of plastic, it was really interesting because we compared the density we found in streams to the density of plastic particles found in Monterey Bay by the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, and it was of about the same order of magnitude. We were finding the same amount of plastic in our streams that they found in the ocean locally. Next slide. So basically, we want to do something about these findings. We want less plastic to go into the ocean. There are several solutions that we can pursue that can reduce the amount of plastic going into the ocean. There are 5 growers right now who are doing a biodegradable mulch pilot study along with UC Cooperative Extension, Washington State University, and myself are involved in this pilot study. We hope to expand it through time and to have a larger study next year. We'd like to have a study to reduce strapping tape, since that was the second most prevalent kind of plastic we found on stream banks. Anybody interested out there who may be listening to this, who may have a model farm where they'd like to see us work on this problem. That's another area where we'd like to find a farm and some growers that would like to help with that. We'd like to see more irrigation tubing recycled. It is possible to recycle that tubing, and we hope that increasingly growers will look to the companies who will pick up that kind of tubing and will recycle it. And we'd like consumers who are purchasing plastic that purchasing food that's grown with less plastic, that's shipped with less plastic, and that's packaged with less plastic. It's easy to see the package, but it's harder to know whether it was grown with less plastic. So it's a question that consumers can start asking. And then growers can also start to purchase products that they use with plastic that has recycled content, or that's easy to recycle, or they can start looking at alternative materials. So next slide. Thank you again, Penny, for inviting me to participate in the open farm tours. This is my contact information. I invite anybody who has questions or interests in the agricultural plastic use or any of the information I presented to contact me personally or through Penny. Thank you very much.
Penny, I think you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Right. Okay. Can you hear me? Okay, thanks, Pam. And you can also, I just wanted to remind people, you can also send questions into Plasticulture 103 at gmail.com, and we'll get your questions that way as well. So our next presenter, and you're going to hear a lot about this coming up, the end of life strategies is something that's kind of a continuous theme through our event today. But our next presenter is Cherish Miller, and Cherish has spent over 24 years in marketing, packaging, and product development with a strong focus on sustainability, recycling, and environmental preservation. And she's the Vice President of Sustainability and Public Affairs at Revolution Company, where her role is to support Revolution in continually looking at ways to provide customers with truly sustainable products. And so anyways, Cherish.
Oh, sorry, Penny. We're having just a little bit of trouble finding, getting Cherish hooked up here. So let me just look and see if I can fix the problem right now. So hold on, everybody. I'm just going to remind everybody, if you have a question, you can type it into the question box. If you are interested in getting one of the panelists to answer your question, then you can you can save that until the end. And when you do that, make sure that you type in which panelist the question is for. So Cherish, can you hear me? Are you on here?
Hi everyone. Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, perfect. So let me make you into a presenter, and then you should be good to go.
Great.
Good. All right. So go ahead and share your camera and your screen. We can see your presentation, so that's perfect. Oh, we could for a sec.
Great.
I don't see it anymore. Hold on. I think so. Can you share your screen and share your camera? I see your screen.
Great.
Perfect.
Awesome. Do you see me now?
That's perfect. Thank you, Cherish.
Great. Thank you all so much for, again, the opportunity to be part of this. We really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who put this on and to all the families currently affected by everything going on, including the fires. Please know from all of us at Revolution, we're thinking of you and with you. And thanks for taking some time out of your day on a Saturday to learn more about Revolution. So just some of you may know us as Revolution, some of us Delta, some of us some other name perhaps. So I want to make sure we all know who we are as a company and then why were we even asked to speak today. So Revolution is a company that not only recycles agricultural film, but we actually make products from what we recycle. And so what you'll see here on this slide is all the products that we currently manufacture and what we recycle. And what I thought would be really helpful is to show you a video about our company that gives you just a quick overview of who we are and how, again, we're part of this recycling solution.
At Revolution, we believe in better plastics that help preserve our environment. Through our revolutionary manufacturing, collection, and recycling process, our products contain as much post-consumer resin as possible, providing our customers with truly sustainable plastic products for agriculture, consumer, and industrial use. Our ongoing production and recycling process is a closed-loop system, and it makes an impact. We recover, clean, and process more than 150 million pounds of material each year, and since our founding, we have diverted 1.5 billion pounds of waste material from landfills and turned them back into sustainable plastic products for you. We think that's pretty revolutionary. Revolution, believe in better plastics.
So from that video, you'll see that we indeed collect agricultural film, we recycle it, and then again, we make it into new products. So we heard on that first presentation, which was wonderful from Pam going through all the details on film. It's just we as a company, Revolution, we want to be part of the solution. So not only are we manufacturing the products that are going on the fields, but we are also recycling those products and making them into new products. This gives you just a little bit of an idea of, again, our company and our footprint. So we have manufacturing facilities across the country and recycling facilities in California and in Arkansas. And again, our whole focus from the beginning is recycling products and turning them back into new products. So we use as much as what's called post-consumer resin. And again, that's recycled materials that have once been used into our products. As far as on the agricultural film, this is really at our roots and what we are very proud of and where we started. And that was to solve the issue of what happens to this film after it is used in the fields. And so what our company's been doing is then collecting that material and again, turning it back into other products, recycling it and turning it back. Here are some examples of different ways in which we are collecting that material, not only on the West Coast, but again in the Midwest and in the South. We are collecting across the country and recycling and turning it into new products. This is just an example of what I was referring to on the post-consumer resin part. And again, this is what happens once we pick up that film from the fields. We, again, recycle it and manufacture it into other products. And then again, in that first presentation, it was talked about how critical it is that this material is used back into other products to really push that demand for this product and ensure that that material does not end up in landfills. And so as part of our company, we have been in this certified recycling realm of ensuring that all these materials that are recycled, again, go back into products and that there's truly a demand. And by certifying that material, it makes that end product something that is of demand. When we were asked to speak today, some of the questions came as to, well, what do you recycle right now? What do you pick up from fields and growers? And these are some of the products that we do now: the silage and grain bags, bunker cover, greenhouse films, boat wrap, drip tape, bin liners, and cotton film. And again, those are the types of materials that we are picking up not only on the West Coast, but in some other areas of the country. And the critical part, again, in us picking this up is understanding that in picking it up, there is an end market. And that goes back to, again, once we recycle it, that it can be turned back into another product, because that's critical. Otherwise, you're taking a long route, right, to a landfill, and none of us want to see that happen. So our company has really focused on what are we picking up, how do we make that into something else, and how do we provide convenience to the growers, and again, an end product that can go into. I wanted to show you this in just another video, and I promise this will be the last one. But to give you an example of something that we had done in the drip tape world, and picking it up and having it turned back into other products. So click this again. And hopefully you all can see my screen still.
At the Toro Company, we're committed to helping growers maximize crop production with sustainable and efficient irrigation practices, including the recycling of used drip tape. As we listened to our grower customers, they started to tell us that they had a big problem recycling. They had no outlet for their tape, and it was starting to stockpile on their farms. So the solution was to partner with Revolution and develop a sustainable recycling program for used drip irrigation tape that growers could count on long term.
Revolution goes out to the farm to pick up the material. We then bring it back to this plant in Salinas, California, where we wash, recycle, and turn it into third-party post-consumer resin. This material is then sold to Toro, and they use it in their manufacturing process. This accomplishes two goals. First, it gives us an opportunity to divert a single-use plastic from California landfills. Second, it allows us to close the loop on the whole product life cycle so that we can reduce its environmental impact.
This program is sustainable and it's environmentally responsible. We're going to divert millions of pounds of plastic going to the landfill through this program.
At Revolution, we believe in better plastics, and we're very excited to be exclusive.
So again, that was to give you an idea of some of the programs that we have at Revolution to truly be able to pick up this material that we've been talking about, and again, find a home for it so that it can be recycled and turned back into something new. We've done this through other programs, through what we call Gloves to Bags program with Chipotle. Our focus again has continually been on how do we meet the needs of the growers? How do we then recycle it and be part of the solution in picking up that material? And then, as we've been talking about, how do we turn that into new products? This slide here, I know it's a lot to read on one slide, but it gives you an example of some of the agricultural films that Revolution makes. And again, the idea being that we pick up that material that's used on the field and turn it back into these products that can be used again on the fields. Some of these links that I've shared here is just another way of showing you that Revolution, again, is focused on meeting the needs of the growers, focused on ensuring that we're part of the solutions in recycling, and being part of the industry as a whole and associations as a whole, and to finding solutions to truly be able to use film products and turn them back into something else. And if you have any questions or would like to learn more about Revolution, this is my information here, and I'm happy to receive any of the emails, questions that you have, and be able to support your needs moving forward. And again, we thank everyone so much for including Revolution as part of this conference and online webinar today. And thank you so much to everyone who's part of our company and our customers, and perhaps you're someone that we pick up from now. And we again thank you for that, and we wish everyone happiness and safety, and we hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Cherish. That was really interesting. And other products that I know that agricultural materials are being turned into, also things like decking. There's some building supplies, things like that it's being turned into. So those are all really good products that we can look forward to being reused. So our next presenter is kind of a duet here. We have Ellen Farmer, who's going to be interviewing Javier Zamora. And Ellen is a writer and editor organizer who is a huge advocate for regenerative agriculture, fire adapted communities, and funding new jobs for young people and ecosystem restorations and wildlife prevention. She's also a friend, and she also was very instrumental in helping get together the presenters for today's panel. So thank you so much, Ellen, for that. And she's going to be interviewing Javier Zamora, who is one of our most beloved farmers in our local area here. He has a organic certified farm out in Royal Oaks, next to Watsonville, and breaking ground in 2012 with virtually no capital or hired labor. Javier began planting seeds that would eventually grow his business that now offers a wide variety of organic products. Coming from humble farming origins in Mexico, Javier focuses on revitalizing a sense of community that has largely diminished in modern farming industry. And he does this through charitable food donations, hands-on farming education, and JSM Organics is a multifaceted farm that specializes in strawberries, but he also grows a diverse assortment of other things too, fruits and flowers, and he grows everything pretty much. And he has 26 employees and focused on providing not only higher quality product, but also higher quality farmer to consumer experience. And this is achieved through dedication to their surrounding community and commitment to a more ethical driven sense of farm management and environmental concerns. So thank you and welcome to Ellen and Javier.
Hello, this is Ellen Farmer. Are you there, Javier? Maybe you need to unmute. We are remote today because what we usually like to do is have an event out on Javier's beautiful farm, which I hope you're seeing the picture of right now. And
there you go.
Okay, good. Hello. So what I'm going to do is show some pictures, and Javier, could you introduce yourself? And after you're done, I'll start asking you some questions about how you use plastic on your farm.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this event. It's beautiful. I'm paying really, really close attention to what Pam has done and the lady from Revolution, Cherish. I think there are a lot of opportunities for us growers to connect with these companies that are doing similar things and in different ways, heading to the same goal of treating our environment better. Well, my name is Javier Zamora, and the only thing I do is I do what my passion is, to grow food for my family, my community, and thousands of people. And I want to make sure that my customers and everyone that wishes to see where their food comes from gets the opportunity to do so. So my farm has always been open and will remain open until the day I die, and hopefully my daughters will continue with that, because that connection between the end consumer and the hands that plant and care and pick our food sometimes are not connected, and it should not be that way at all. So thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. And we usually love to be at your farm, and there are many you pick days. And as soon as we get through this COVID crisis, we'll be back there. Right now, sorry, I'm trying to advance my slide and it's not happening.
Ellen, sometimes if you click on the window.
Okay.
And then try and advance using the arrows. There you go.
Okay, so this is Javier with his mask on, being responsible. And here, the next thing I can show you are some pictures of what he grows: flowers, vegetables, beautiful berries. And over the years, he's been able to switch from, for the consumer, switch from clamshell plastic to recyclable cardboard packaging. But one thing I want you to see about his farm is there are lots of crops he can grow without any plastic at all, just the drip tape to save on water. And this is the beautiful Royal Oaks Farm site. And here's some corn being grown completely without plastic except for the drip tape, which is carefully pulled out of the field and recycled. And Javier, do you want to talk a little bit about how you can grow berries without plastic?
Well, I think if we go back to what Mother Nature has provided for us and how it's not that difficult to go back and kind of like not rely and depend on plastics to grow food, or use them in a way that is very responsible and minimize the quantity that you do. I think it's you're able to do it, but sometimes mainstream media and the changes of technology make some growers believe that they need a new product to grow what they grow. Um, having having grown things all of my life, especially in Mexico when I was little with my parents and my brothers, there was no need to use all sorts of things that these days we have available. I think what you need to do is you just need to understand what the needs of whatever crop you want to grow and how you can grow it at the time that it should be grown. And if you want to extend it a little more, maybe play around with different types, in this case, raspberries or even strawberries, that you can achieve the goal of providing the consumer with an extended season.
Uh-huh.
So there's different ways. I think it comes back to sharing information, educating yourself, and actually just doing it and giving it a try and see how it goes. So I've been able to grow raspberries for the last, I mean, since I started in a different way compared to what main ag uh, growers do. And I think we've been able to achieve that. So it's just, again, it's sharing information, educating yourself, and trying different varieties and different types of crops.
Well, I certainly know you to be a very innovative farmer who's into rotation and all the different organic practices and regenerative practices and trying something new every season. I really, really admire that about you. So we're going to go to the next slide. Let's see if I can. Okay, here's another farm tour day. And just down in the left, you can see a little bit of drip tape. But what I'd like to do is ask you about the basic plastic uses on your farm. Like, what is important to you about using plastic?
So again, the most important thing for me is to make sure that what I use is not going to harm the environment and it's not going to make my soils worse than what they already were when I first took on this piece of land, and leaving it better for the next generation. So I rarely use plastics on things that plastics shouldn't really be used. I think maybe the main usage of plastic for me is strawberries, because not because I love plastic. It's just because plastic provides a lot of benefits, and some of the benefits. The number one thing is not for me to eliminate the weeds or make the fuel that our strawberry fields look beautiful, stay in place. The main reason why I use it is because the end consumer does not like strawberries with any sand or soil or dirt. We are accustomed, or most of the customers are used to seeing beautiful things with no any dirt residue. The other thing is, it's obviously for the same reasons that a lot of growers use them. It's because it retains the heat, because it minimizes the weed pressure, because it helps you with maybe the water usage and those things. But there are things that you can do when you're using the plastic. If you're looking at the picture that is beautiful, it's actually last year. Uh, it's one of my fields at Maher Ranch where the cooler is. It's a very steep hill. Plastic will help me with the controlling the erosion, but where there's no plastic, I want to make sure that I have some sort of plant growing. So because it's the rainy season, I don't want that hill to come down into my neighbor's property or the parking lot. So
Right. So when
yeah.
this is done, how do you recycle the plastic?
Also, the plastic, I now that I'm learning about Revolution, I think I'm gonna contact them. But what I've always do is it's when we remove the plastic, it does not get mixed with any other debris or trash or organic matter, and it's taken to the landfill. They have a specific place for it. I really don't know whether they're recycling it the right way, like this company, but at least we're bringing it to them in a way that they can manage it better versus just mixing it all up with uh, rocks and trash and
Right.
debris. So you have to be very responsible on. I mean, when we buy it really clean and in a roll. Why shouldn't we return it in a way that can be recycled? But some other people that have the mentality that Revolution does.
Yeah. So what would actually help growers recycle more of the plastic?
I think if we connect with companies that will pick it up, we will definitely go that route because a lot of times most growers don't have a site where they can store the plastic until they come to get it or until they have enough plastic for them to make it worth their while. So what we need to do is make sure that we get into a relationship with a company that has the mindset and they have the tools to recycle. So drip tape, plastic mulch, and all sorts of things would have to be recycled and they need to be recycled. So we need to have a site locally where growers can take the plastic mulch and the drip tape so it can be taken away and disposed and recycled properly.
That sounds great. And just for consumers who were on the call, I'm wondering, can you talk about going from the clamshells, the plastic clamshells, to these beautiful ReadyCycle cardboard containers? What made you switch, and was it more expensive?
Well, when this is about, I believe it's 3 years ago. Well, Sarah, I think it's going to be on some dialogue we'll be presenting later on, and we'll let you know exactly when I started. But when this opportunity, when this was presented to me, I mean, I let Matt and Sarah finish their talk, and then I say yes, I will do it because I see what the customers are demanding, and I see the need of us changing things. I think you kind of mentioned a little bit that I'm not that norm guy. I'm definitely weird and I try different things. I'm not really afraid to make a change. And when you see a change that it's available for you, why not? It's
Yeah.
it's a beautiful clamshell. It goes in line with what we believe in, treating the environment and making sure that we're not harming the environment or making it worse than what it already is. So if we all do a little bit at a time, it can definitely make a change. And I think this was a very, very revolutionary change, not only for my small little company, but it actually made a lot of growers start thinking about, oh wow, Javier is doing it. Let's do it because you, the end consumer, demands for a change. So
Exactly. Yeah. When I go to my store, I just don't buy anything in clamshells anymore. I look for your products, and a few other farmers now are putting cherry tomatoes and so forth in these cardboard recyclable containers. So what kind of feedback are you getting from your customers?
oh, they love it. And then what you just said, what else can you put in there? Now we put Brussels sprouts, we put cherry tomatoes, we put sugar snap peas, anything that you think of. I mean, anything that we used to play with a little what is it, green mesh plastic little basket that you see around.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't seen any of that thing for the last 2 years in my operation. And when I see something, I'm like, whoa, you know, sometimes the customers go and return things at the farmer's market and they go, well, I got this for you. We gladly take them back because I know I can dispose them the right way. But we also let them know this is, this comes from somebody else, but we encourage you to tell people to use something similar to what we're using. And this is what we use. So and they immediately go, oh my God, that's so much better for the environment. And thank you for doing this. And, people are just really appreciative of what we're doing.
Well, I certainly appreciate it, and I can't wait to invite everybody on this call out to your farm as soon as we can have an in-person event so they can meet you. So thank you, Javier, so much for your presentation today.
You're very welcome. This place is open for you guys, and absolutely, you're welcome to come and visit us. Even during these times, the farm is big enough for us to be socially distanced, that you don't really have to worry about getting sick or anything like that. And it's such a beautiful experience. It just changes your spirit and you see life a little different. And I'm really happy. I'm really blessed that I can do that for a lot of people.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Gracias a todos.
Okay, what a beautiful presentation that was. Thank you, Javier. And thank you so much for being so concerned about the environment and the way that you grow. And, I definitely look forward to your strawberry U-picks and coming out, being out on the farm and everything. So I also wanted to just kind of mention very briefly at this point that there are some alternatives to mulch that are being developed right now to the plastic mulch. There's a sprayable paper mulch that's being developed through the Washington State University. And there's also some mulch that's being developed that's I think it's pronounced chitin. It's shrimp shells, arthropods, that can possibly be sprayed on the field. So those are kind of exciting things, that are non-plastic that could be coming our way soon if we fund it and make it a priority. So anyways, I would like to introduce our next presenter, who's Rachel Kippen. And Rachel is the executive director out at O'Neill Sea Odyssey, which was founded by legendary wetsuit innovator Jack O'Neill. And they provide free ocean-going science and sustainability education for more than 107,000 youth in the Monterey Bay. And Rachel is a coastal environmental advocate, artist, and she has a background in public program development, nonprofit management. She's the past program director of Save Our Shores and has an extensive background as a marine science educator. She's very much at the forefront of education, research, and on the effects that waste is having on our environment. And many of you may be familiar with the popular Our Ocean Backyard column that she writes for the Santa Cruz Sentinel. So welcome, Rachel.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Yes?
I can hear you,
Yes,
Rachel, but for
you.
participants, if you guys can hear Rachel, then go ahead and raise your hand.
We're good? Are we good?
Hold on.
Okay.
Okay, I see a few raised hands. That's good. Okay, perfect. Go ahead.
And you all can see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Penny. And thank you everyone who's on this call today, who I can't see through the internet. Appreciate you being here. I also just wanted to say thank you to Javier. I think environmentalists sometimes really can point their fingers and be not so kind to folks who work in agriculture. And agriculture workers and farmers know the land, in my opinion, better than probably anyone. And so Javier has just been involved in so much sustainability work here, and is never shies away from having a conversation about sustainability, and I really appreciate that. So I just wanted to talk briefly today about some of my work in ocean conservation and education here in the Monterey Bay. And my graduate research was on agricultural plastic as well over the last few years. I wish that I had gotten to meet Pam earlier, because we studied a lot of similar things. And also want to talk about agricultural plastic as a really, I think, profound educational tool to kind of share the complexities of sustainability. The complexity, there's a new word. Okay. So at O'Neill CIADC, we serve primarily elementary and middle school age students, mostly from the Salinas Valley and the Pajaro Valley. And for those of you who are on this call who are not super familiar with the Monterey Bay region, those are really key growing regions in this area. And a lot of our students are the children of agricultural workers, whether that be field workers or people who work in packaging. But that's a lot of the folks that we serve who come out onto our program on the ocean. And for many of them, it's their first experience on Monterey Bay, which we obviously need to change that. We need to have them have more experiences on the bay. And part of what they do with us is they do a lot of different kind of data collection. They'll count sea otters, they'll pull plankton samples out of the bay. And recently, in the last year, we've started to collect plankton samples where we monitor for the presence of plastic, because we do see plastic particles in our plankton samples. So we've started to, it's the first time we started to monitor for an environmental toxin in our programs. And Pam mentioned this, but in 2019, there was also this kind of groundbreaking study that Dr. Anela Choi put out from MBARI, the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, where she found microplastic particles at every depth in the bay, from the deep, deep sea in the canyon to the surface, and in every single specimen that she analyzed, which were a lot of different invertebrates primarily pelagic red crabs. And I think a lot of people in Monterey Bay were like, whoa, we have microplastic in our bay, but we've done so much work to ban single-use plastic bags and styrofoam and cutlery and all of this stuff. And so we're in some sort of denial, I think, of how much microplastic is truly in our bay. And as you've seen from Pam's study, some of that is coming from agricultural plastic, of course, having these two environments so closely linked together. So that was part of my studies for graduate school, to really explore our use of agricultural plastic in the Central Coast. And for a while, I worked for the city of Watsonville as their environmental projects coordinator. And some of my roles there included a lot of waste reduction and climate and water conservation work. Probably many of you are familiar that the Pajaro Valley is an overdrafted water basin, meaning that there's constantly a fear of saltwater intrusion coming and really making it hard for growers to grow along the coast, and that we don't have enough water for people for all of their uses. So there's all sorts of innovations, recycling residential water to reuse it as agricultural water. And there's this really kind of interesting juxtaposition with using agricultural plastics, which, as we know, can be a water conservation device. Well, at the same time, when rain falls on an impervious surface, as you can see here, two things happen. And I've seen it a lot in the Pajaro Valley, either flooding, which we know is a huge problem, of course, for the farmer if their crops get flooded, and then for people who live in areas that get flooded, and then also quick runoff. So, just having that rainwater hit the plastic means that it's not going to seep into the soil like we really need it to, that'll move quickly into the Monterey Bay, and then we won't be able to capture it. And especially in a changing climate, we've seen the rainy season go from, a 6 months healthy rainy season to 4 months to 3 months to non-existent, to having, really intense downpours, and then having that be kind of the only way that we can capture water. So this to me is, again, really showing the complexity of this issue, how you conserve water and then also store it for all of your needs. Additionally, my research really shifted towards environmental justice, because I'm sure, as many of you are familiar, the petrochemical industry is responsible for pesticides. And pesticides have had, a long history of harming primarily people who are working closely to agriculture, an unfair burden that they're bearing. And with a toxin, or excuse me, with a material that's synthetic, like plastic is, that has all of these different chemical additives, including phthalates, which are endocrine disruptors, having that in the plastic in the field, in the baking sun, is going to release and leach those chemicals into the air, into the soil. And I think for the people that are working so closely to those plastics, that if we were to test their body burden, and for those of you who aren't familiar with that term, basically doing a test on the different chemicals that are found within their bodies that they have absorbed from their environment, that we would see parallels from the agricultural plastic chemicals to the chemicals found in the bodies of the people who work with them closely, and then also kind of all of us as consumers, because that's leaching again into the soil, getting into our water, and potentially even getting into our crops that we're all eating. Sorry, hey, okay. So I'm gonna shift a little bit. So again, for those of you who aren't familiar with this region, part of my research was to look at agricultural plastics, particularly in really crucial watersheds, such as the Elkhorn Slough. The Elkhorn Slough is like the holy grail of Monterey Bay. There is just such an intense diversity of life. It's where so many different mammals reproduce. It's a nursery habitat for baby animals. There's an abundance of invertebrates that are a food source and just inherently valuable on their own. There's terrestrial beings, bobcats, coyotes, mountain lions. It's just going off. It's like National Geographic every single day there. And around the Elkhorn Slough is this kind of shifting ancient sand dune ecosystem. The Elkhorn Slough Foundation purchases properties around the Elkhorn Slough to try to restore them back to kind of the most sustainable state that they can be. And a lot of those properties have been used over the last 100 years for agriculture, dairy, and now a lot of berry growing. And that can be really challenging for the Elkhorn Slough and also for the farmers, because imagine growing on a sandy, shifting habitat. So I want to share a little kind of case study of one of the properties. Elkhorn Slough Foundation in 2016 purchased a 107-acre farm called Sandhill Farm. A sandhill, a really steep sandhill. There was a strawberry farmer who farmed conventional strawberries on that property. And then in 2016, as probably many of you remember, there was a huge amount of rain that came down. And as we talked about, impervious surfaces and rainwater, they're not mixing well. So there was a massive landslide. And this farmer's $20,000 worth of plastic infrastructure was buried, fully buried. And the farmer went bankrupt, unfortunately. Elkhorn Slough Foundation then got a grant, purchased the property, and was on this really fast timeline of trying to flip it and restore it before the next rainy season so that more toxins wouldn't enter the slough. I just want to share some of the pictures of the different types of plastic that were prevalent on that property. Pieces of film mulch, huge amounts of film mulch, and one second, and just so much drip tape. So imagine kind of literally pickaxing into the soil and ripping out drip tape. And I had this kind of epiphany at this point. I was like, we are yanking bundles upon bundles upon bundles of this drip tape. And then it's going out of the ground. And then it's going to go into a landfill back into the ground. It just doesn't, I had a really hard time computing that. And then for me personally, I also thought that would be a really great kind of educational segue. And I saw this ag plastic, this drip tape, as being art material. And so I created some curriculum. I'm personally part Native Hawaiian and grew up in Hawaii. And as a child, part of my cultural education was weaving out of the hala tree, which is leaves from a tree in Hawaii, and making all sorts of materials. That's called lauhala, hats, mats, bracelets, all sorts of things. Similar to how here in the Monterey Bay we have, indigenous weavers and Ohlone using tule and pine needles for baskets, and across cultures we see weaving of natural materials. And I thought the idea of understanding kind of the generational change from natural materials for our surroundings to synthetic materials would be something that a student particularly could really connect to. And really just saw so many parallels. So here up in this first photo of folks are just ripping that ag plastic out of the soil on Sandhill Farm, similar to harvesting natural materials like the hala leaf. and then curing the leaf, which was a lot less dangerous than, excuse me, go back here, than curing ag plastic in your personal bathtub. And then, preparing it for weaving. And it kind of begs the question of, what are we left with here in this modern day world where everything is synthetic and potentially leaching toxins into us, and what are we left to weave with? And so this is my own personal art. And then, actually, I'm going to show you a little video here really quick. Also, just to kind of go back to the body burden conversation, because I'm sure this is going to be a question. I primarily work with this material using gloves, except for after I've completely cleaned it. And then I use my hands, and I probably also have a body burden that contains the chemicals found in agricultural plastic. Come on. All right, so here's my bathtub, and we're cleaning. I have literally probably a lifetime supply of agricultural plastic drip tape for art. There's just so much. And I want to talk also about the fact that Sandhill Farm wasn't the first farm that Elkhorn Slough purchased that had agricultural plastic waste cleanup as a major issue. Because again, when a farmer is working on such a tight margin, as we know, it can be, really challenging. If you have one season that goes bad, or a landslide, like what happened at Sandhill, there goes your whole existence. I'm gonna speed this up here. I'm painting, la la la, and product. Sorry. So, anyways, did that on my own, and then realized that was something very translatable for students and art, and understanding kind of the intersection of environmental justice, sustainability, agriculture, all of it. The indigenous ways of knowing too. And so here just are two photos. One is in Elkhorn Slough on a public property called Kirby Park, public access, and you can see plastic film mulch all along that pathway. And then plastic film mulch, ag plastic along the Pajaro River levee. This is the cement pathway here. And this goes down towards the river itself. And when I went to speak to students about this issue, first and foremost, they knew about it, right? They've seen it all around them. They've seen their food and how it's grown. They see how they receive it in packages, and then they see the disproportionate burden of the waste that it creates in their communities, which inherently in itself is an environmental justice issue. So they were already very aware of this. And I got to work with an Ocean Guardian school. NOAA has an Ocean Guardian program, and an Ocean Guardian school in Watsonville, Minty White Elementary. And for our project, we wove and created kind of collaborative art around agricultural plastic, and talked about how complex it is as an issue for the environment and for human public health. And what I also found really fascinating is that I think people often think, students kind of can't comprehend all of this. Young people are so smart, and they catch on to so many things. They see so many things, and they were able to make the connection, for example, with ag plastic and synthetic materials to settler colonialism, and the fact that we've completely changed how systems have worked since Ohlone were here. That was just kind of amazing. And then they really had this sense of respect for material, right? And this was a reclamation process. It was plastic that had been abusive to a really pristine environment, and pulling it back out, saying we're not going to landfill it, we're going to kind of honor it. And then on their own accord, they created like kind of homage to Watsonville wetlands creatures. This was not dictated by me or by their 5th grade teacher, Kate Friels. They did it on their own. They made ducks and butterflies and birds and lizards, and it was just so incredibly overwhelming. And then also on their own, they wrote poetry. They came up on their own with the student named Javier. Blooms lovely over our meaningful, intentional, and native ground. This is a 5th grader again. And so I guess in conclusion for me, as an environmentalist, agricultural plastic has reshifted my appreciation, understanding of, and connection to agriculture, and kind of reminded me how brilliant our young people are, and that this is a issue that takes collaboration across the board for us to figure out kind of the best way forward. Also, I didn't add my contact information, but feel free to please reach out to me. My name again is Rachel Kippen, and I can be reached at rachel@o'neillcodyssey.org. Thank you. How do I?
Thank you so much, Rachel. And absolutely in there with the collaboration across the board that it's going to take. And that was something that came out of this group leading into our next presenter, because we didn't have someone representing agricultural plastic from a packaging point of view. And initially we had Sarah Lonzano from Sombrio Packaging, but she wasn't able, she had a different schedule for today. She wasn't able to be here. So Mary Scheller, who's our next presenter, she's a former advertising professional. She's a Santa Cruz County master recycler, graduate of the City of Santa Cruz Master Recycler Volunteer Training Program. And she's also a sanctuary steward with Save Our Shores and a docent at the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary Exploration Center in Santa Cruz. And she was awarded the 2019 Ocean Steward of the Year Award. So welcome, Mary.
Thank you, Penny. I'm going to put my slide up and focus on the AV. So hopefully you can all see it. Yes? Okay.
Yes, it's beautiful.
Okay, fantastic. Well, this has been fascinating. We've really done such a great dive into the upstream, but I'm here to talk about the downstream. Where does all this produce packaging end up? What happens to the millions of single-use plastic containers when their contents are eaten? So if you ask most consumers, they will tell you it goes into recycling. Well, that used to be true until about January 2017, when all that changed. The US used to export 70% of our plastic waste to China. And then China instituted their national sword policy. It was something we were aware of for a number of years, but we simply didn't implement the infrastructure to do our recycling here domestically. The reality is today that only 9% of plastics are recycled, and virgin plastic is cheaper than recycled plastic. It's not only cheaper, it's more abundant, and it's heavily promoted by the petroleum industry. It's staggering for me to realize that half of the plastic on Earth was created in just the last 13 years, and that 80% of it is strewn across our landfills and contaminates our oceans. So where does most plastic waste come from? Well, product packaging, it's number one. And food packaging in particular makes up a huge proportion of that. And of that food packaging, 60%, more than half, comes from just one family. And I bet you guys can all guess what that is, the thermoforms, or as we like to call them, the clamshells. So if you ask most consumers where clamshells end up, they tell me, oh, they're going to get recycled. They'll be turned into other plastic clamshells. Well, I'm here to tell you that's fake news. You see, clamshells are made with glycol. It's a different rosin than the PET or polyethylene terephthalate, PET, that is in plastic bottles. That lower grade plastic mucks up the machinery at the recycling center because it melts at a lower temperature. And the labels and the adhesives that are on most clamshells don't come off easily. So as a result, none of it is recyclable. What's worse, not only is it melting at a lower temperature and mucking up machinery, but at larger recycling facilities, the optical sorters can't pull it out when it's going down the conveyor belt. So those clamshells flatten and they mix in with a higher quality plastic or with paper, contaminating all those bales. So at the end of the day, none of it gets recycled. So do plastic clamshells ever get recycled? Well, it really depends on where you live. If your town takes them And I would say almost most importantly, market conditions. So the city of Santa Cruz, for example, where I'm a master recycler, does not recycle plastic clamshells. The county of Santa Cruz and the county of Monterey contract with green waste and they will accept them. But accepting them doesn't mean they're necessarily recycled. What happens is they're accepted because the contract stipulates that, but they likely sit in storage waiting for a market or waiting for a buyer to purchase them. And this means in some cases, you'll see the quote down here from Calgary. The city of Calgary had 2,000 tons of plastic clamshells. They couldn't find a buyer for them, so they stored them in 92 semi-trailers for over 2 years. They exhausted 50 possible options to try to recycle them, but they were all too costly. So the price for Calgary, which ended up having to bury all those plastic clamshells, was almost $500,000. The irony is we buy beautiful organic produce in low-grade plastic clamshells that aren't being recycled and shouldn't be washed and reused because of the chemicals like PFAs that can leach out of them. The end of life for so much of our produce packaging, whether it's clamshells or the plastic mesh baskets or plastic bags, and yes, even compostable bags, is the landfill. We know consumers want to pay more for quality. I think about my own life, and I remember when it was crazy to buy bottled water and pay much more for bottled water than regular tap water. And yet today, in a recent survey, 1/3 of consumers said they would pay even more for bottled water if it came in a biodegradable bottle. You probably can all remember when an organic aisle in a major supermarket seemed like a pipe dream. Instead, it's now mainstream. So build it and they will come, build it and they will buy it. Someone who's really in the forefront of building it in sustainable packaging that Javier talked about is Sombrero Packaging. They're right here in our backyard in Watsonville, California. And they're leading the way with a 100% recyclable cardboard package. You saw it in the photos that Ellen and Javier showed, as well as the photo here. This cardboard package can be home composted. It's called ReadyCycle, and the ReadyCycle cartons have a water-based coating, a vegetable-based ink that you can use to customize to your brand or your logo or to your specific nutritional information. ReadyCycle is available in a variety of sizes, with and without lids, and it really showcases quality produce and directly supports growers like Javier. So you can find ReadyCycle at some of our local stores here and used by some of our wonderful local growers. It's really been designed with end of life in mind, and it's a welcome step forward. So I encourage you to spread the word about ReadyCycle to consumers and really encourage retailers and produce managers in your store to carry it because you're directly supporting growers and their great products. Now, over in the Cincinnati area, on the other side of our country, Sun Sugar Farms has developed a 100% recyclable, home compostable container they use for cherry tomatoes, edamame, mushrooms, and more. Their cartons easily biodegrade in your backyard compost pile. They're the same size as clamshells. They stack higher than plastic clamshells, and they ship flat for assembly. Besides, they have these very neat earth-themed cutouts for ventilation. So both ReadyCycle and Sun Sugar Farm cartons are PFA-free. They're 100% recyclable. They're home compostable. And I make that distinction because many compostable things nowadays require an industrial facility to be composted, but these can literally be composted in a week in your backyard compost pile. And then, of course, they're customizable to your brand. So with all the press on plastic pollution, consumers are really looking for greener alternatives, and they expect growers and packers and retailers to offer them. I hear it often as I'm walking the neighborhoods as a master recycler, or I'm at schools, well, pre-COVID at schools, or at other events. people see these cartons and they say, why don't more stores carry non-plastic options? So, and you can see some of the quotes from some of the consumers about both Ready Cycle and Sun Sugar Farms cartons. So how do we make the move from single-use plastic to sustainable containers? Well, there's no silver bullet. It's a toolkit. There's an array of options. And I've tried to diagram a few of them here. This is certainly in no way exhaustive, but it gives you a sense. I've touched on Ready Cycle and Sun Sugar Farms, 100% recyclable cardboard containers. There's also pulp fiber containers, think egg cartons, and that's what pulp fiber is. There are even mini donut boxes, though they have cellophane film. There is a reusable, refillable delivery system that many of you may have heard of called Loop, which is from TerraCycle, an awesome recycler out in the East Coast. And they're starting to work with major brands like Nestle's and P&G to test a reusable, refillable delivery system for their products. Then there are also the rPET or recycled polyethylene options. So this is actually using recycled material that you would find in water bottles instead of virgin plastic. The downside there is it still involves plastic, which breaks down into microplastics, and it supports the petroleum industry. There are also bioplastics, corn, sugarcane, potato, etc. They don't use petroleum, but be careful, because as I mentioned, unless there's an industrial facility to compost bioplastics, they are going to end up in the landfill, or worse, they'll end up contaminating recyclables. So consumer demand is really driving change. I think several of us have said that today, but it's really up to us, as stakeholders, from the farmer to the retailer to us at the waste facility and waste management, to work together up and down the supply chain and try to find better solutions. We really need to think of end of life for packaging as part of our strategic solution. I say whatever our role here is today, whether, it's a farmer, a recycler, a volunteer like myself, all of us at the end of the day are consumers. And at the end of the meal, we're all faced with a decision. What do I do with this package? And to be honest, do I even need this package? So as a master recycler, I'm here to tell you, we simply can't recycle our way out of the plastic crisis, but we can rethink our produce packaging and our purchases. We can refuse plastic, especially single use. We can reduce our footprint. Don't waste in the first place. And when we do recycle, let's make sure we do it right. Keep it simple, keep it clean. So packaging has a second life, not an end of life. So I encourage all of us who are on this webinar to try to team together and empower consumers with better choices, support our local growers, and really motivate our retailers to move to sustainable alternatives. Together, I really think we can rethink how we purchase and how we package for our planet. Thank you. And feel free to continue the conversation with me and my other fellow recyclers. You'll see Santa Cruz Master Recyclers on Gmail, or follow us on Instagram. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Mary. And one thing you said really resonated with me too, is the build it and they will come, build it and they will buy it. And that is so true. And also that there is no silver bullet. It's going to take a lot of different structures, a lot of different types of systems to deal with the issues that we have. There's no real one solution for anything. So, and working together, definitely, and rethinking how we do things. Sometimes I think the greatest challenge that we really face is just the mindset of the people, because it is going to take a different mindset for us to rethink how we fit in with the ecosystem of the earth. And the earth is a living organism. So we can't just keep taking out of it, taking. We have to put back into it and replenish it. And so that, all these things are really important, and they've never been more important than right now, honestly, because I think we're at a real turning point in our society as far as how much longer we can continue down this line of polluting and just pitching things without the end of life cycle, which again was a kind of a common theme today. And none of this stuff happens overnight. There's a transition that needs to happen in everything, so we can start transitioning through us working together and really making it a priority to deal with these issues. So I'd like to bring all the presenters back right now and open it up to our question and answer period. And I think Lisa's been kind of compiling some questions from our attendees today, and she was gonna kind of look through and see if there were ones that a lot of people were asking and addressing those. And in addition, if people really do have questions they really want answered, you can certainly email individual presenters or also the Plasticulture, excuse me, 103@gmail.com. Okay, so are we ready for some
Yes,
question and
we are
answer here?
ready.
Okay.
Yes, we are ready. So those were all just fantastic presentations, everybody. Thank you for taking the time. We've had just so many really amazing comments from everyone. So so thank you guys so much for being here. First of all, one of the comments that is here is actually for everybody, and is something that obviously would need to be fielded through Penny, but a lot of people were asking whether your slides would be available to participants. So I don't know if that's something that you guys are open to, but that's definitely a number of questions that I've gotten. So does anybody want to say yes or no, or okay, thumbs up on there. Okay, well that's good. Okay, for Cherish on Revolution, how often do you recycle a product? Can you recycle things more multiple times, or is it just one time that a product can go through your recycling process?
It can go through more than once, absolutely. Where we see that really as an example is in the South, that when we recycle the material out there, and more. So absolutely. And we do testing to ensure that it has the strength that it needs when it goes to that next step. And that's all part of our process and our manufacturing specifications.
And do you ever do any testing to determine if there's any kind of toxicants, from one as it's going through, from one farmer situation, agricultural situation, if there's anything residual?
Yes, there is testing done, and we're actually in the process of working with the FDA of getting a letter of non-objection so that we can use our post-consumer resin for direct food contact. So we are in further testing on that as well.
Okay, great. And also for Cherish, what type of products is drip tape recycled into?
Multiple products. The one that I showed the example to, that particular one that Toro does, they actually recycle it into other film versus directly back into drip tape. But we're able to put it in different agricultural films that we have. Being it is darker, if we make it into products, it just needs to be one that can, again, have a dark color normally.
Great. Question for Rachel. One of the participants wants to know, did you say that every single invertebrate monitored from the bay had microplastics in its gut?
Yeah. Yeah, so and it wasn't every invertebrate in the bay or every species of invertebrate, but I would highly encourage listeners to check out it's Dr. Nella Choi. She did a study on microplastic in Monterey Bay, and every specimen that she collected, in addition to the water samples that she collected, contained microplastic particles. And we rivaled the concentrations of, you know, what many people call the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which we know is not that, but the, you know, the gyres of plastic that many people are familiar with, we rivaled those same rates here in Florida. And in some places exceeded. Bummer.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things that, and certainly Pam and I, we talk about this in our office a lot, is that, you know, a lot of what we're doing is just trying to build awareness, trying to sort of get up and over that huge hill of awareness. And I think, you know, things like this are really super helpful to help build that awareness. So this is a question not specifically sent to any one of you. So if multiple panelists want to join in and answer, this would be great. So it's evident that strawberries are the most common crop that uses plastics locally. I mean, it's a huge crop here locally, obviously. Is this typically the case when you look at the U.S. as a whole or the world? And are there other problem crops that require a large amount of plastics? So I don't know if anybody wants to join that, sort of jump on there. Ellen is also on the phone. She's not sharing her camera. And Javier's on here as well. So if you want to talk about that, Javier.
Yeah, so I can tell you that, I mean, I don't have all the numbers or the statistics to give you quantities or amounts and tonnage of plastics that are used in different crops, but in our area and probably in the countries where strawberries are grown, most of us use a lot of plastic. There's a lot of usage of plastic in other crops like tomatoes and squash and bananas and all sorts of things. I'm talking about the plastic film, but I think overall, I would almost say that because strawberries are only grown around here, so maybe it's a big amount for our area, but worldwide, not really, because more tomatoes are grown all over the world and bananas that require a lot of plastic. So maybe, you know, someone like Pam or somebody that deals with numbers a lot, they can figure that one out. But in our area or in California, it's mostly strawberries and tomatoes that use the most plastic probably, and then some squash and leafy greens. They do that, but it's because of the packaging and all sorts of things like that, but not necessarily to put down on the field. Strawberries, I mean, conventional strawberry fields and tomato fields and potato fields are all fumigated with chemicals that require a tarp on top of them, on top of the soil, before the soil or the land can be shaped into beds and before it can be planted. So I would say my top three would probably be tomatoes, strawberries, and possibly, I don't know, but those two are in my head right now.
Yeah, and I'll actually talk to that a little bit too. There's an area in southwest Spain, I believe it's pronounced Almeria, and it's south of that is the largest area of plastic use of plastic in greenhouses in the world. And it's visible from space. It's just a huge, if you look it up on the internet, if you go, you know, type in plastic Spain, Almeria area, it is just thousands of miles of white plastic greenhouses. And that's pretty much how they grow their crops there.
Interesting. So a question for Pam. Let me actually scroll back up here. Question for Pam. Does plastic sheet kill the live organisms in the soil and therefore rob the nutrients that should go into the strawberries? Is plastic sheeting, you know, using plastic sheeting, is that sort of breaking that connection between the nutrients and the actual products?
That's a really good question. And there has been some research done on that to find out whether plastic interferes with the microbial life in the soil that is so important to plant growth, and soil health means plant health, and the plants also improve the health of the soil. So they're reciprocally maintaining processes. And if there's too much plastic in the soil, it really can disrupt that process. So if the retrieval from the field is incomplete at the end of the plant cycle and the plastic starts to build up, it can reach an unsustainable amount of plastic in the field, such that it really does interfere both with earthworm travel and movement, and with water travel through the field, and also with the microbial life that's in the field. And so it really, it can interfere with that, but it doesn't the first time you use the plastic. It's kind of the gradual buildup that really interferes with the health of the soil.
And what are the barriers to using biodegradable plastics?
Well, one of the big barriers to using biodegradable plastic is just not knowing how well it's going to perform. Polyethylene mulch plastic allows us to have a longer growing season, to retain soil moisture, to have the right temperature for the roots and for the growth of the plant. And like Javier said, to keep the strawberry off of the soil so that it's clean when it arrives to the consumer. And with biodegradable mulch, one of the big barriers is just not knowing how well it's going to do with all those things at the local climate. Here in Monterey, they've tested it for the past 15 years up in Washington State and found that it's just as effective as PE plastic for use up there. But we really need to test it under local conditions for the kinds of crops that we produce here, for the type of soil we have, for the acidity of the soil, and to make sure that it will break down under our conditions and not also become a problem that might, if it didn't break down quickly enough, that could be a problem. Or if it breaks down too quickly, on the other hand, that could also be a problem. So really, we need to test it locally, which is what we're starting to do this year.
Right.
Can I
Oh yeah.
can I answer the farmer way? Pam is so nice and so beautiful. It's all politics. If they're using it in Australia and they're using it in Europe, why can't we use it here? Why are they creating such a big fiasco about whether it can be used in organic production or not? We know for a fact that if it's, I think it has to do with some other interest that we're not aware of. Because I've seen people use it. I've seen very smart people that have no interest in making money, where they have studied and they've taken the time to understand why they're using it in Europe and Australia, but the US has, some other interests that are making it a little more challenging for us to use it. But we're going to overcome that when we're going to use them. I know we will. We just have to get more people involved, like Pam, and people that can be more outspoken and can be talk about what the benefits are and why we need to use it. And they need somebody like me that is kind of noisy and gets it done and show the people that can be done. We just have to be willing to do it.
A couple of questions. Talk about scalability. How scalable, Cherish and also Javier, how scalable are your different practices? So when we talk about how scalable is recycling of agricultural plastics and how scalable are some of those cardboard boxes? I mean, is it something that can only be done on a small scale, or is this something that can be done much larger? So Cherish, why don't you go first?
Okay, so absolutely. It truly is all about in markets. We've been recycling out of our Arkansas facility for over 20 years. And so there's a demand for that end product. Like we make trash can liners, from that as well. So it's not about the scalability. It's about once we recycle that material, it going back into something. And that's what's really critical, is that in demand to proliferate that. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah,
And how,
I'll answer that again, the farmer way again, because people sometimes when we do these kind of talks, or maybe we do a little bit of a presentation and they go, oh, Javier, he has a small farm. Well, let me tell you something. You start small and then you start going to mid-size and then you can go large. There's absolutely nothing that says that my farm, that it's 100 acres, can be, 5, 6, 1,000 acres, and using the same techniques that we're using. My farm is not the acre and a half anymore, but you can scale up as much as you want, as much as that demand exists, and this will all depend on community conscious. If we have the customers that are willing to pay a little extra money, more money for a recyclable or biodegradable clamshell, and if we have somebody that understands that maybe Javier is going to use burlap that costs 10 times more than plastic, and they're willing to share some of the costs, we can definitely do that. You send me someone that has the willingness to put some other technology money available to scale something up, I'll show them how to do it. Absolutely. And not for me, just to show them that these methods of growing crops, it's really been beneficial for communities and our environment. It's just, unfortunately, business, the capitalism sometimes requires you to have higher and higher returns, neglecting some of our environment, and maybe, obviously, always, for the most part, neglecting the people that are farming and growing the crops. So I don't look at things like just making money. We need to make money. So my customers get it. They understand. They're willing to share some of the cost of my clamshells, because that way I can make it available for them. As a small farmer, I cannot absorb the expense of tripling my packaging materials without getting some sort of return or getting the money back from the customer. So it's a community consciousness that we all have to be part of to make the change. But it only takes one person to start the snowball, and the snowball will continue rolling. So we have to look at things that way. So.
Yeah, and actually sort of going along with that, Javier, it takes one person to make that change. A number of questions from the different speakers have been, how do consumers, people going into their local supermarkets or big box stores, how do consumers pressure those big box stores to make a change? And actually, I was wondering, Mary, if you would answer that, because I think with your background, you probably have a few tips for that kind of stuff.
Sure. Yeah, I think one of the ways we started doing this pre-COVID was to go into Costco's, to talk to the store managers, to talk to the produce managers, who were very receptive to, for example, Sombrillo's ready cycle packaging. If you can get someone like that to try it regionally, and we were doing it as a city of Santa Cruz, we had a Costco, we talked to Whole Foods. As a consumer, I do that as a master recycler, and to basically communicate, to send emails, to get on Instagram, to get on social media platforms and say, we're looking for better options. And to go into stores. I'll go into some of our local stores here that carry the sustainable packaging, and I will talk to them and say, I really appreciate the fact that you're carrying these. And they'll say, well, it costs more. And of course, they're putting them right next to the plastic clamshells. But you can see the beauty of that product. I mean, I bought, before I even knew Javier, I was buying his products. They looked more beautiful than the ones in the plastic clamshells. They tasted much better. And I was willing to spend the extra money. I mean, I have the ability to do that. Not everyone does, to support a local grower. So I think, you know, we can do it with our purses. We can do it with our wallets. We can do it with our words. I really encourage people to just go into your local stores and talk to the produce person, talk to the store manager, get online and write to some of these companies and say, hey, I really want this product. So that's one way you can do it. And gradually, we really can kind of change the trajectory. You know, when I think about it, Sombrilo, which invented ReadyCycle packaging, also invented the plastic clamshell. And years ago, it was really expensive to have a plastic clamshell. So they were able to change. Little do we realize all the, you know, the downside of plastic. So we can all make the change.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we can all make the change for sure. And it's just like anything else. Like think when the digital camera first came out, how expensive they were. And now you can buy one get one for a Barbie, you know. So it's like the price comes down once people really start supporting that. And I just wanted to speak very quickly to the scaling part of it. They were talking about before. Lakeside Organic Farms or Gardens is one of the largest organic growers in the country, and they're out of Santa Cruz. They also have fields down in Imperial Valley, but they are a large scale, but they're not a mono farm. And so they have gardens, you know, they grow things in different gardens, much like Javier has different areas. He's not growing like thousands of acres or hundreds of acres of just one crop. And that is really what is damaging is to our environment is that. So anyways, I just wanted to speak to that.
Well, I think, I mean, we've gone over a little bit from what we originally said we would do, but I think we probably should cut off the questions now. So thank you everybody who wrote in questions, and I'll hand it over to you, Ellen, for any closing remarks that you have, if you have any. Oh, sorry, not Ellen. Penny, you're sorry. I apologize for that. You're on mute. You're on mute for some reason. I don't know how you got muted, but
oh, here we go.
Okay.
So yeah, I just wanted again to you know, thank all our panelists for coming together and really putting this together. I think it's a real good start. And also Rachel had kind of some exciting news that I'd like to close with, because we were all kind of looking, you know, we were talking about like, well, we have 450 people have signed up for this. So we have a huge audience attendance today. We can't just leave them, you know, without something. We're thinking of some action items in that. And Pam and, you know, mentioned something about drip tape, how a lot of the small farms really didn't meet the minimums for that. And we started talking, saying, well, why don't we collect it and meet the minimum? And so anyways, Rachel, would you like to speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. So I think it's a great idea from Pam and Penny, and formerly worked for the city of Watsonville. And one of the projects that we worked on in terms of making sure that after a growing season, a lot of workers are seasonal workers, that they would have a place to return things like mattresses, household items, appliances, right, stuff that when they're going to move, that hopefully won't end up in the environment and gets disposed of appropriately. And then we're like, we can copy that model, right? We can basically replicate that for drip tape. We can have a drop-off day and have a site in Watsonville for one day at the end of a growing season, and advertise it widely and have farmers be able to bring their drip tape back, and have some bilingual staff there to help make sure everything makes sense, and then get it recycled for free. And the city of Watsonville is certainly interested in that partnership. And again, there's lots of local jurisdictions that have done take back days like this. Salinas Valley Recycles has done some really great take back events. And so why not start thinking about take back for at least drip tape, doing that, ongoing, hopefully a few times a year for years to come. So that's what kind of the general scheme.
Yeah. So that's really exciting. So that's something that we're definitely going to be doing with this. And again, you know, if people want to get involved and want to know ways that they can make a difference, please email us and we'll get in touch with you. And thanks everybody for coming. And this has just been a wonderful event. Thanks.
Gracias. Hasta luego.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone.